Hello, one and all. I am honored to invite to the stage Member of Knesset and Chairman of Yesh Atid Party, Mr. Yair Lapid. Mr. Lapid was the Minister of Finance in the Israeli government, and what we no longer remember is that he is one of the people who really understands the power of words and to what extent they can change reality. About 3 years ago, he was part of the 100 most impacting men from Times Magazine, and the reason was that if the world sees Israel through the prism of the Israeli-Arab conflict, Lapid represents the focus of the nation and his personality. And from this focus, MK Lapid will talk about a vision for a great Israel. MK Lapid, the floor is yours. Good morning. The topic I would like to speak about this morning is the future of the State of Israel. In the current political system, nowhere is a real debate about the future being held, the place that we are headed towards, what we can and should achieve. I will present to you a little later on my 7-point plan for the future of the State of Israel, but the first principle is that the future is not something you simply wait for. The future is something you need to lead. You can't just sit there from 1996 and wait for time to pass you by and do nothing but survive politically. You need to ask yourself, where do I want to be? Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? Where do we want to be in 5 years' time, 5 years down the line? Security-wise, socially, internationally, let's define where we want to be and then work at it. If we look at the future, then we must acknowledge the circumstances and time we are living in. We have issues, 21st century issues, and we must lead with 21st century solutions, with a leadership that comes from the 21st century. We need an updated security view in a place where the main threat is not conventional military forces, but missiles and terrorism, and there are completely new definitions to victories. And we have to start with social cohesion, with a feeling of togetherness. That is the true basis for Israel's safety. We need solutions in the educational arena, for classrooms, where each child has a smartphone that connects them to all the information the world gives. We need to have an updated alliance with the United States, a new United States that is more self-engaged, that is no longer dependent on Middle Eastern oil. We need to deal with the challenges that social networks are posing for democracy, Israeli democracy. Israel is currently not investing in the industry at all. The various production lines are being closed, moved to Jordan or Malaysia, and nobody's investing in new factories. So who's dealing with that? Who's taking care of this trend being reversed? And above all, we need to acknowledge the fact that 3.5 million Palestinians are an issue, and it is time to have them out of our lives. We can no longer look at them and tell ourselves, it really is a problem, it really is dangerous. So our solution is to just move this issue passed on to our children. They'll have 5-6 million Palestinians. Let them deal with it. We don't want to. That is no form of leadership. And I am not willing to let that happen. Just recently, I was at a special Shabbat reception at Beit Hashanti. It's a very special place set up by Mariuma, who's big redhead. And she was attacked brutally when she was 17 years old. And her reaction was to set up a place for youth that live on the street. They're at high risk and they have nowhere to live. And when they let Shabbat in there on a Friday afternoon. There are about 70 such children, 14 to 21 years old. They're all sitting at long tables with challah, fresh challah, freshly baked, and that smell was driving everyone mad. But Mar Yuma has a rule. We don't start bringing the Shabbat in on Friday afternoon until each and every one of the people, young people sitting around the table, stands up and says something good that happened to them over the past week and something good that they're hoping will happen in the following week. And that's no easy task for these children, because they were growing up on the street, no parents, no school, quite a few were not born here, and to stand up and speak before everyone is difficult. And a beautiful girl was standing up and she couldn't speak, and the boy who just enrolled into the army last week had tears in his eyes, and he found it difficult to speak, but Mar Yuma doesn't let go. She wants to hear one good thing from the past week and one good thing they're expecting in the following week. And otherwise, they won't eat. And I asked her afterwards, Mar Yuma, why do you badger them? Why are you on their backs? You can see how hard it is for them. And Mar Yuma said, because we live in a world where everyone is always complaining. There's this entire culture of victimhood, and I don't want them to be there. This place, Beit Hashanti, the entire aim of it is to teach kids how powerful they are, to teach them that if they aim for good, then good things will indeed happen. That's a vision. It's putting the future, these children's future, before their eyes. And that's what we're here for. That's why I am running for Prime Minister. Because I want Israel in the future to be what it used to be in the past. A country that is an inspiration to others. A country that poses great challenges for its citizens and leads them to huge achievements. In order for Israel to be the kind of country we want it to be, we need first and foremost to go back to believing that it's possible. This entire concept that Israel was established upon was that everything is possible. If they hadn't believed then that everything was possible, we wouldn't have been the best. We wouldn't have had the best army. We wouldn't have become the start-up nation. We were established because we thought that this was possible. 7 Arab military organizations were against us, and yet we won. We set up a nuclear power place when we're still young. We absorbed millions of immigrants without knowing where they live. The Entebbe operation, the Iraq reactor attack, the fact that there are more Nobel Prize laureates here than there are in huge countries like India and China. All of these stories are stories of making the impossible possible. That's who we are. It's in our DNA. And it's time to go back to that. When we did the national program for Holocaust survivors, $1 billion shekels in a difficult time financially, giving them free medication, going to survivors' homes, making sure they're taken care of, everyone who was engaged in this said it was impossible, until they realized that it is possible, that if you are willing to go into a room and say, this will happen, because there's a country here that is committed, and I'm not willing to hear of any other option, then it turns out that we can. In recent years, Israel has no such vision. It has lost it. All we have are crises and responses. That's the way things have been happening for the last 10 years. We have lost the ability to create our own overarching strategy and to follow it. The Prime Minister and his ministers are going ahead with all sorts of media conferences, press conferences, saying all sorts of instructions have been given out and nothing happens. The country that has beat all the Arab nations in 6 days cannot now even move one ammonium container in Haifa. Our students are number 30 in the world at reading comprehension. They don't know how to open a book and understand understand what it says in it. Who is now taking care of this? Who is taking care of our future? Is our government, does it remember that these are the requirements, the job description requirements? Israel is a wonderful country. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I go around the country and I really am filled with pride. We have a wonderful army. It is powerful, it is sophisticated and moral and ethical. Our economy has such great potential, and mostly there are such great people. In 1 week you meet more amazing people in Israel than you would meet an entire lifetime elsewhere. And when these people work together, when they had a leadership that was willing and able to lead and spearhead a true vision, they did things that were unbelievable. They turned the impossible into possible on every single day. But all of these advantages are based on processes that began 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and that's no longer happening. We have become a whole that is less than the sum of all its parts. And that is what I would like to change. In somewhat of a surprising manner, it's very easy to see where the obstacles are. It's very clear what the obstacle is, what is stopping the progress, and it's politics. Israeli politics is corrupt. It is the fact that it is now really the ugly face of Israel. It's everything that's inefficient, and that is our main obstacle. Israeli politics splits us up, divides us, rather than uniting us around true goals. Instead of working, it's trying to make us hate one another. And my task, our task, is to replace this splitting, dividing, hating politics with one of hard work and uniting. Because this politics is the reason we have stopped making progress in Israeli politics, is the reason why every young man, especially every young man and woman in the periphery, is saying, I can't go anywhere without having some sort of ties, some sort of connections. Between the citizen and their country, there's a contract. And it's very simple. The citizen works hard, the citizen pays taxes, serves in the army, and abides by the law. And in exchange, the state protects citizens' lives, gives them social and personal safety, and uses the money it is given from citizens properly, with dignity, because it's been hard-working money. And the fact is that citizens are doing their part, but the state is not. This agreement is being breached day in, day out. I was a cabinet member in the former government, and I'm currently a member of the Security and Defense Committee. And both of these are run with political interests instead of national ones, and that is a terrible breach of this contract. When our money is divided because of political pressure instead of what is right and fair, that is a breach of contract. When there is a minister without portfolio, that is a breach of contract. When tenders go out not to those who should win them, but to those who are connected, that is a breach of contract. When the most senior of politicians are only motivated by their own personal survival, that is an unforgivable breach of contract and a crisis in trust. The trust between citizens and their state. And that's not an amorphous thing. It is the basis for this entire machine. When there is no trust between citizens and the state, our entire future is at stake. It doesn't have to be this way. There are enough examples from our past, but also today, in these days, there are enough people, not only at Yesh Atid, that want it to be different. There are enough people who think that if they said something to their electors, to those who voted for them, that is something that they should abide by. Value is power. Conniving and rudeness brings us down, and generosity and friendship and love. These are the greatest forces in the universe. That's what we came to politics for, because only a group that came in from outside, a whole group of people who let go of a lot of money and didn't need anything from anyone and had a very comfortable life, but came into politics because they see it as a mission in life, not just as work or a job. Only such a group can head and lead people to a better place. In order for Israel to make progress once again, in order for it to be a Jewish and democratic state that is prosperous in its own safe borders, we need to work in 7 lines, in 7 channels at the same time, the 7-point plan. Behind each of these plans, there is a work plan. 3 points is from the political security side, 4 is from the social and civil front, and they all together, all these 7 points will create a future of progress. The first is to create a perception of security that is not only based on being housed behind fences, but also a fist that is active and can push away aggression from Israel. We cannot give in to the enemy's attrition. We need to achieve political goals. We need to make the campaign as short as possible. We need the home front to be hurt as little as possible, but also to create synergy together with all of our other capabilities, our financial, media, technological capabilities, and all of these together should be done while maintaining the law and the legitimacy internationally of the State of Israel. In routine times, we need to ensure that the IDF's quality edge is maintained, and to constantly harm the enemy's capabilities and their building force. But above all, Israeli security, Israeli power is a product of one nation that is united, whose leadership leads them to the uniting rather than the dividing. Because if we don't have a strong nation behind us, we will not have a strong country or a strong army. Following this security perception, we need to initiate a regional campaign that will make the Palestinians leave our lives and create acknowledged, recognized, and final borders for Israel. We do not look for marriage with the Palestinians, but rather for divorce. We want to set up a demilitarized Palestinian state alongside Israel while keeping security, while keeping the IDF's freedom of activity and of Jerusalem as the united capital of the State of Israel. We must rehabilitate our strategic alliances, first and foremost with the United States, because that is the alliance that really makes sure that we have an advantage over our enemies. We also need to speak to Russia and China and the EU financially and otherwise, and to also speak with moderate Arab states such as Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, with whom we have the same interests in the war and campaign against radical Islam. We need to speak more with NATO and to create the basis for future membership. And we also need to re-establish, and in a different manner, our relationship with the Jewish communities in the diaspora. And this must be done with dignity, with respect, with recognition of all the different streams of Judaism. We need to go back to being those who are right in the world. Israel needs to be associated once more with innovation and values, not only with wars and with targeted killing. The fourth point is that we need to begin a campaign of cleaning the political system. We need to be more severe with corruption. We need to abolish the coalition funds. We need to change the regime so that governments are elected and then remain intact for 4 years, because only then can you create a system that is stable enough, that is not populist, that can also have long-term plans. The fifth point is that we need to invest greatly in order to enhance the law enforcement chain, from the police force through to the courts and everything in the middle, in order to create a system that is just, efficient and unbiased for every Israeli citizen. That is definitely a process that will be expensive, but it will prove itself. And that has been proven in many places around the world, such as the broken window reform of Giuliani and so forth. The sixth point is that we need to create growth that is based on export, an expedited process of export that will allow stability in the economy and will allow people to earn more money and have a better standard of living. We need to have the ultra-Orthodox and Arab involved in the top echelon, in the more earning portion of the labor market, and not to have those kind of laws that are detrimental to small businesses. We need to give long-term and cheap loans to factories, especially in the periphery, that invest in training and machinery that is facing outwards towards export. And the seventh and final point is to greatly increase the investment in education and science. We need to use the profits from natural gas, first and foremost, in order to set up the technological array once again, to set up a system of scholarships for higher education that will allow anyone to study and that will close the gaps between the periphery and the center and between the rich and poor. We need Israel to be one of the top 10 countries in education, to have the core studies part of every school in Israel, to have a national education program, and also in research and science. It will bring us to the top of the academic world. It will also be connected to Israeli industry, and will bring that industry back to the top of world innovation. I know that some will look at these 7 points and say that they're too difficult to implement. I want to remind you that in this country we have done things that are so much more difficult under such harder circumstances. There's a willingness in Israeli society that we haven't had for a long time. People are willing to start a change. This is a moment. There is a moment now of recognition in Israeli society that we need to change. We don't always have such an opening, such a window in time, but there is one now, and it is now the time. We need to recognize that, to seize it, and to go ahead, embark on our journey. These 7 points need to be projected up on the wall in every government office, on the wall of every decision maker in Israel. Anyone who has ever worked in a successful company knows that its vision board has to be simple, has to be binding, and the work plans that stem from it need to be detailed and clear. And we have such plans. We are willing to start tomorrow morning. We are willing to talk about them with every sector, with every part of the political system. Those who are not willing or are not able to advance this vision should go home. The people of yesterday, the people of the old politics will either adjust or leave. All those who have come to politics to make money or for the nice seats will either have to adjust or leave. The entire public service must be on board this vision, and it'll be good for it. People would rather know that they have value, that they have purpose, that they're part of something bigger that is changing the world. It is so much better than to punch your card from 9 to 5. It won't be easy, but it's possible. And in order for this to happen, 2 things must happen that are not happening right now. The first is an Israeli discourse of head-to-head. Excuse me, says the speaker. Instead of head-to-head, we need to be in agreement. This rudeness, this creates a vacuum in leadership. Nobody knows where they're going, so everyone thinks they can go their own way. When there isn't a direction, the tribes start to fight with one another. But moderation and joint work together towards progress is the Jewish way. The middle way, the golden path, is the right path, said Maimonides. It is time for us to have a vision that Israel goes to elections over and votes for, one that marks our social boundaries. If you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. If you don't want to be part of this, if you think you're above the law, then Israel will not give in to you. A strong country has a strong nation behind it. If you're trying to weaken us, then you're weakening our security. We will face extremism, enticement, without wavering. We want to be an alternative. We are clear, we are decisive, and we're much more effective than the radicals. And I have news for you. Unlike what we hear in the media and on the social media, most Israelis are not extremists. When those suspected of the fire in the Duma village that killed the Wabshe, they said they were doing so because they wanted to take vengeance over Malachi Rosenfeld killing in Binyamin. And late that night, I talked to Sarah Rosenfeld, a religious woman living in the territories, the mother of Malachi, and she was so upset that her son was used that way. She said it was a slap to the memory of her son. God is not willing to hear such things. Those who represent the majority in Israel and sane part of Israel is Sarah Rosenfeld, and she needs to be listened to. And the second thing that we need is leadership in the most basic of senses, one that is up to date, one that is relevant for this day and age, that is able to harness most resources and capabilities behind the strategy that is decided upon. That's how I set up Yesh Atid. That's how it became, in less than 5 years, from a plan on paper to a political force that cannot be ignored and that has redefined the center of politics in Israel. And that's what we need to do, to bring the best people, to give them clear goals, and to go work at it, to work the way we work in the 21st century. Israel is currently not being run properly. We need to get the entire world on board in order to make it run properly. The old politics doesn't want this and cannot run it. So we need to face them in order for Israel to create its future rather than wait for it. We need to get on board anyone who is willing to help and to move out of the way anyone who is in our way. That's why I am running for Prime Minister. That is why we want to be the ruling party, not for the chairs, not for the seats in the Knesset, but in order to make a change and give us a future. In the Independence Scroll, it says that the Jewish settlement brings the blessing of progress to the world. It's a wonderful statement, blessing of progress. Blessing is something that is divine, that is godly, but progress is something, it's our commitment to take this blessing and to make it something that is new, that is innovative, and the combination of the two, that is what being Israeli is all about, making a place that is possible. And the only question we need to ask ourselves is, are we going to suffice with what we have, or can we unite and work together, believe in one another, respect each other's capabilities? Maybe then we can, with God's help, get to a better place, the place we deserve to be in, the place our children deserve to grow up in. I believe that's true. And I would like to call upon you to believe in yourselves. It's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member of Knesset Yair Lapid and the